Welcome to the 2022 Shirley Hall Bass Dance Educators Forum. We're so happy to have you join us today. I'm Pam Burnside, and it is my honor once again to be one of your hosts for the next 2 hours of fascinating presentations and discussion. The Shirley Hall Bass Legacy Project supports performing arts education in the Bahamas by developing and promoting youth programs, scholarships, research, K-12 standards, curriculum development, and advocacy work. Today's event is our annual international convening of dance educators, regional experts, and advocates to review scholarship and to discuss topics around dance education in the Bahamas as a professional learning community. We will also be presenting several awards for legacy work and lifetime achievement in dance education. If you are joining us on Zoom, feel free to place your comments and questions in the Zoom chat or on our Facebook page. Both platforms will be monitored by our virtual facilitators, Shara Goldsmith and Melanie Maldonado. Thank you. We are dedicating this year's forum in memory of Mrs. Andre Brainin, the mother of Bahamas dance theater instructor Shirley Hudson. Mrs. Brainin was an active member of the auxiliary of the Bahamas School of the Theater, and we thank her for her many years of service. We extend sincere condolences to her family and friends. May she rest in peace. As always, an essential part of this forum is to remember and commemorate the person who made it all happen, in the person of Shirley Hall Bass, who took the Bahamas and its children to her heart in the late 1960s and made such a positive difference in the lives of so many of us and to our country as a whole. Shirley is seen here on the bottom right with the Direttes, the famous female touring chorus group formed in 1950 by her Chicago mentor, Sonny Dyer. In this promotional photo with Nat King Cole in the center. Let's watch a short clip now with Muriel Foster, one of the original Direttes.
But we were really the only act of its kind, thanks to Sammy. He made us do all of our disciplines. And we did tap, we did jazz, modern, we did ballet, added the singing, and then we added the comedy. That we didn't learn from Sammy. And we found out that it really worked with the audience. We closed with the acrobatics because that was not expected at all. Because they had never seen black girls doing and no maths, and that just would have the people they just couldn't believe it.
And we have another photograph of Shirley with Cherie Pinder and another generation of Bahamian children. But as a member of her first class of dance students in the cultural exchange workshops here in the Bahamas in the late 1960s, it is truly an honor 50 plus years later to be a part of this project to keep the performing arts alive and well, and to ensure that Shirley's phenomenal contribution. It is my pleasure to introduce our first two presenters for today. Kristen Carroll began her dance training at the Sammy Dyer School of the Theater in Chicago. She is a former lecturer at the University of the Bahamas and Columbia College Chicago's graduate program in education. Kristen has choreographed for various organizations in the Bahamas, has served as the Education and Community Engagement Manager for the Joffrey Ballet, was instrumental in the creation of its Bridge program for children of color in Chicago, and led numerous professional learning workshops on the implementation of movement across the curriculum. As co-founder of the Shirley Hall Bass Foundation, she advocates for quality performing arts education in the Bahamas. Our second presenter, Dr. Faith Butler, is also a co-founder of the Shirley Hall Bass Foundation and an advocate for creative arts education. She is an assistant professor in the School of Education at the University of the Bahamas, where she has avidly participated in curriculum design, led the research management team, been one of the lead developers of the School of Education's first graduate program, was one of the visionaries for the 2015 Teacher Education Program, and has served as head of department for music and art. Dr. Butler is currently involved in creative arts research and curriculum development for creative arts teacher education. She is the current professor in residence at the T.G. Glover Professional Development and Research School.
Hello, everybody. So I'm going to take us through just a little bit about the work that Faith and I have been starting. And our goal is really to inspire possibilities. This forum's theme is all about nation building and being able to imagine creatively a future for a new nation as the Bahamas is entering its 50th year. Our goal, because we have such a phenomenal group of professionals and regional experts gathered, contributing, and Shirley's legacy students are so incredibly expert and well-practiced in all of their different fields, is that we are pulling together a professional learning community or a group of advocates that are going to carry this work for us. So we have basically 5 main goals. We're advocating for performing arts education through social media and engagement events such as this. We're doing scholarship and research to make sure that we can prove to the government, prove to our members that this is work that is valuable, important, and does have a really quite an impact. We're also partnering with the University of the Bahamas to support them in their research studies around developing other degree programs so that we can have additional programming. For example, tertiary degree programs or dance certification programs, drama certification programs for our public school students. And we also would like to advance the development of performing arts programming in the Bahamas just by getting funds together so that until we have full-time programming at the university level, quality programming, or reopening of the National Dance School, we should be able to send our children abroad to get or bring people down to them until these things are put in place. Finally, a lot of our work is about preserving the history. Pamela Burnside is a phenomenal cultural advocate and knows the value and the significance of collecting the historical photographs and the narratives of the performers, because this is Bahamian culture. I'm going to pass it off to my friend Faith, who's going to share a little bit about our 5-year plan.
Thank you, Chris. If you can advance the slide. Okay, so when we look at our 5-year plan, we started this project actually in 2019, where we looked at the students of Shirley Hall Baz, and I mean, it was phenomenal, the amount of people that came forward. So in 2019, we interviewed about a little bit over 25 students of Shirley Hall Baz, but that now has evolved into a 5-year plan from that. So in 2021, my students and I conducted a literature review, which you will hear about some today. And we also developed a national survey prototype so that we could gather information to inform our development of curricula, and because to develop a professional learning community and forum, which we did then. And then in 2022 now, we're collaborating, as Chris had said, on a tertiary degree with UB, looking at K-12 national performing arts standards with the Ministry of Education as well, and working with UB through an advisory committee for performing arts education. So our task right now is trying to complete a feasibility study for National Performing Arts Program. Then next year, we hope to work on standards, developing standards, national standards for performing arts program, implementing a K-12 pilot program, and of course, related professional development when we look at at what needs to be done in terms of advocacy, in terms of teacher training, all of that for 2023. Then in 2024, we have big plans. We look to adopt those national arts, performing arts standards. We look to further scholarship, particularly at the university level, particularly in relation to facilities, and then of course research, because we always want to work with evidence. So research and publishing in terms of 2024. And then in 2025, we hope, cross our fingers and pray that our first students will matriculate from UB with certification in dance and drama, and that we have some semblance of the implementation of a national performing arts program. So, keep your support, and we thank you for your support in that regard. Okay. Then in terms of our achievements, I've mentioned some of these already. The feasibility study, we're working on that right now. We've also established a Shirley Hall Bass Foundation in the UB, in the US, and we are working on a nonprofit Shirley Hall Bass Legacy Project here in the Bahamas as a partner, so that we work together, across the seas to get this work done. And then we've also submitted that nonprofit application already. We're also, and you'll hear some from the Bahamas Dance Association representative today, Shirley, and we're collaborating with that organization to develop criteria for our scholarships. And that will be presented today. Yay. Then we have our presentation in terms of each semester. Well, for the last during COVID, we've only had it once per year, but it started out with twice per year, our conversations in education. And Chris was one of our presenters in this last spring 2022 presentation of conversations in education, where we looked at resilience in relation to arts integration. We also conducted a professional development workshop with the Ministry of Education in terms of performing arts education. We're very happy to see the turnout for that, and we hope to continue that in the future. And then in October, busy, Chris and I are presenting at the National Dance Educators Association in Atlanta, and we'll be looking at our narrative inquiry, the work that we've done already, and also Chris will be presenting more on her narrative inquiry in terms of Madame Lavinia, as well as Shirley Hall Bass and maybe others. So that's our achievements. We're working hard, and we thank you for your support. And Chris?
Thank you. So we've had a really phenomenal couple of years working together and reaching out. So regional scholars like Nicolene DeGrasse Johnson have been invaluable towards our work. Oh, yeah, thank you. Have been invaluable towards our work. My relationship with Pierre Lockett from Joffrey Ballet. We got Melody Maldonado. Everybody give Melody a shout out. She's watching our Facebook chat. She is an independent scholar that works on not only African diasporic dance that's related to the culture of Puerto Rico, but also genealogy studies. So people are learning about their ancestry. Of course, we have the phenomenal Courtney Celeste Spears and just people from all over who are really committed to performing arts education. Chris Justilian's music you'll be hearing throughout the presentation today. So next, without further ado, I'm excited to present to you Yatasha Womack. She is an Afrofuturist and an author. She is incredibly well published and has presented films. Recently, she had a film that won the Best Experimental Film at the Collective Voices Festival. She's working on other films, including The Bar Star City and Ryla 2012, a story about a time traveling reincarnation story book series. that inspired another work. So when we talk about creating work that inspires other works, creating works that inspire other, this is what she does. She inspired an entire conference at Duke University. Someone saw her work, they were truly inspired by it. So what I found really interesting about Yatasha's work, I was talking to Melanie about Afrofuturism being the theme of the, African diasporic dance conference last year. And I said, Afrofuturism, what's that? And I started reading and I started doing some research about it. And Yatasha's name just kept coming up over and over again. I was so amazed to find this connection that she is from Chicago, right? So this is a full circle. I'm working in the Bahamas. I'm trying to find resources for the Bahamas, and I went and found myself a homegirl. She has lectured and worked all over the world. Her work has been translated into Portuguese and Spanish for markets in Brazil and Latin America. And the book we're going to be asking you to look at, Shar and Melanie are going to find this and drop it in the chat for us, is her book, Afrofuturism, The World of Black Sci-Fi and Fantasy Culture, which was presented in 2013. I am going to make her a co-host so that she can share with us this exciting subject, which bridges science fiction, futurisms, and culture. So Yatasha, let me co-host you, and so that you can present your slides and we can get started.
Exciting. Well, thank you very much. It is a pleasure and an honor to be sharing. It's a joy to have Chris, a fellow Chicagoan dance enthusiast. We come out of the same, I would say, training, and that we both emerged out of these family-oriented these family-oriented Black dance schools founded by performers here in the city of Chicago. And Chris was out of Sammy Dyer, as is Ms. Bass, who we're all celebrating today. And I'm actually out of the Mayfair School. So these were complementary dance programs out of the city that had a great deal of impact locally, and Sammy Dyer clearly having a great impact in the Bahamas. So I am very glad to be sharing with you here all today. I am what you call an Afrofuturist. And some of you are probably wondering, well, what exactly does that mean when you say you're an Afrofuturist? And essentially what it means is I am a person who thinks about futures and alternate realities, but doing so through a Black cultural lens. Afrofuturism is a fairly new term, but the term emerged in the 90s as part of this essay by a gentleman named Mark Deary, who was talking about Black speculative futures and Black science fiction and questioning the cultural relationship to Black science fiction in an essay he wrote called Black to the Future. But nonetheless, just the idea of having a relationship to Afrofuturism or having a relationship to the future is one that all cultures are very much immersed in. But for me, I started off as a writer, a journalist. I grew up as a dancer, coming out of the Mayfair School of Dance, heavily centered around tap dance. And as I, moved into my teen years, clearly doing more around ballet and jazz. My high school, Whitney Young, was a big performing arts school. There was a big emphasis on modern, contemporary, jazz, pom, drill. I was captain of my pom-pom team. And moving into college, continued to dance, although I was a journalism major. And this relationship to dance, I soon discovered, was one that shaped how I saw the world. And as an adult, I'm taking salsa and samba. I grew up in a family of steppers, which is, the Chicago style partner dancing. And I just really started experimenting with a lot of different styles, in addition to coming out of a vast house music culture in Chicago. And all of this mixed in together made me a highly rhythmic person. But what I did not realize until I started thinking about Afrofuturism more deeply and choosing to write science fiction stories in exploring the theory of Afrofuturism is that dance is a relationship to time and space. All cultures have a relationship to time and space, and African diasporic cultures are no different. One thing that's very cool about African diasporic cultures is that a lot of our relationship to time and space is evident in our cosmologies. You see it in our spirituality. You see it in our philosophies, our mythologies, the stories we tell one another, our visual art, our music, our architecture, but also our dance. And, you know, in all of my dance experimentations and in this life I'm living as a dancer, it wasn't until I went to take salsa lessons in Cuba through a program that a colleague of mine put together named Erica. Hello, Erica. I believe she's out there listening. And she would bring people from, you know, various parts of the world to Cuba to have them learn song, you know, which is sort of the basis for salsa, to learn rumba. And it was there that it sort of clicked for me that dance is interdimensional. And when I say that, you're probably thinking, well, what do you mean dance is interdimensional? Meaning that we are, through our body and the rhythms that we're moving to, we are articulating a relationship to time and space that connects with our cultural roots, but also really projects and moves into a future. And so sometimes when people think about Afrofuturism, they say, oh, wow, this is such a heady dynamic. Because we're thinking about the realms of outer space, we're thinking about science fiction literature, we're thinking about characters, we're thinking about far off futures, and people say, oh, that's a heavy contemplation. They don't realize that a relationship to time and space can also be embodied. And our music has rhythm, and rhythm in and of itself is a deconstruction of time. And when you're moving to it, you're deconstructing space. So many of you have been quite interdimensional for some time and had no idea as you were getting lost in the music, so to speak. And when I think about Afrofuturism, it's really centered around this concept called Sankofa, which many of you are familiar with. Sankofa is a Akan symbol that loosely means to, reach back in order to push forward, or to move forward, or to look back in order to look forward. But it's a symbol that's quite commonly referenced in Pan-African studies. Here I have an image by John Jennings. John Jennings also illustrated the previous images that you saw. And he's taking Captain America and really sort of inverting it and thinking about the creators of Captain America as if they had been of African descent. So he created a character called Major Sankofa, which is quite an interesting superhero. But it comes to embody the symbolism of taking the best of the past and moving it into the future. And a lot of that is articulated in how we think about histories and futures. And I would even go so far as to say it's a core aesthetic of not just Afrofuturism, but Black artistic practices. And just to give you some common references in Afrofuturism, I'm sure many of you have heard of Sun Ra. Sun Ra, the great jazz musician who spent some time in Chicago. But Sun Ra believed that music could facilitate time travel. He believed that you could bridge time and space through music. And at some point, as he emerged and came of age in the 50s, he started to think that he developed a mythology that he was actually from another planet and came to Earth in order to heal the world with music. And to me, whether someone chooses to believe that story or not, I think what's most important is he's looking at myth and storytelling and elevating really the power of music to facilitate change and transformation. Another popular reference in Afrofuturism is Octavia Butler. Octavia Butler is one of our leading science fiction writers. She wrote Wild Seed, she wrote Kindred, and she too played with the idea of time, particularly in Kindred, where she explores this narrative of a Black woman coming of age in the 70s who has to keep slipping into her enslaved or her family's enslaved past. And it becomes a larger story about reconciling with the past trauma. But essentially, it was one of the first uses of time travel in this dynamic where time travel was used as a space of healing and storytelling. I'm sure many of you are Funketeers, and George Clinton is also a symbol of Afrofuturism as well. Oftentimes we look at the space tropes, this mashup of Egyptian imagery and space imagery. But when you think about the music of funk and the way it flows in time, it too is articulating a particular kind of rhythm and giving us a really fun image of the future. But Afrofuturism, while it does have its quote unquote cosmic dynamics, it is a grounded practice as well. Because essentially what we're doing is looking at futures and alternate realities and telling stories through a Black cultural lens. So Afrofuturism, you'll see it in music. It could be an epistemology, a way of thinking about the world. It can be a form of thinking about critical race theory. But it's also, I think, with respect to dance, a way of embodying liberation and self-healing. So I think about Afrofuturism as intersecting these ideas of mysticism, imagination, liberation, and technology. However, I feel Afrofuturism is most exciting because it encourages us to use our imagination to transcend our circumstances. One can imagine themselves in the future. And through the art of dance, we are also, in one sense, embodying a way of relating to the future. And dance becomes a space of play in the imagination, which could be an inspiration to then think about new futures. And just generally speaking, Afrofuturism, it differs from other takes on the future or future studies or science fiction because it recognizes that time is nonlinear. The future, past, and present can very much be one. And this is an idea that's also encoded in the concept of Sankofa. Afrofuturism recognizes that mysticism and technology can be integrated concepts rather than being these two very separate ideas. Afrofuturism values the divine feminine, meaning it values women, it values femmes. It also recognizes that some of those things in sort of it also recognizes that intuition and feelings and nature, which are sometimes in our spiritual ideologies associated with the feminine aspects of ourselves, those things too are as valuable as our thinking nature, which is sometimes described as masculine. This masculine and feminine balance is symbolized by the ankh. It's symbolized by the often male and female figureheads that we see in a lot of African art. And so you're balancing the thinking nature and your intuitive nature, your conscious world and your subconscious self, the quote unquote three-dimensional with the multidimensional. And Afrofuturism recognizes that race is a technology and that the concept of being Black that we're all socialized into, or the concept of being white prior to the transatlantic slave trade did not exist. That's sometimes a little heavy for some people, but the idea of being Black and white did not exist before the transatlantic slave trade. And we were cultures, we were nation states And this idea of dividing us based on continent and skin color was something that was encoded through race and violence. And that's acknowledged as a technology. And to that end, writing is a technology. Dance is a technology. Some of our spiritual systems are technologies, meaning that these are ways in which we understand the world. And Afrofuturism helps people to think of things in that way. I reference Reverend Coleman, Johnny Coleman. She's a metaphysical pioneer here out of Chicago, but she spoke a great deal about using the power of your imagination, something that came to inform me. Just as Mae Jemison, one of the first Black American astronauts, stated, never limit yourself because of others' limited imagination. Never limit others because of your own limited imagination. So my theory work around Afrofuturism and my science fiction work around Afrofuturism really converged as I began to think more about myself as a dancer. I started an Afrofuturist dance therapy program, and this program was one where I wanted to combine or introduce students to a lot of different African diasporic dance forms, introducing them to storytelling, freestyle dance, choreographed dance, and give them opportunities to write and reflect. I brought in dance teachers. I myself was the primary dance teacher, but I brought in individuals such as Ken and Jedi Russell, who's a tap dancer and West African dancer. He came out of the Mayfair School as well, to work with the students. And we learned stretching techniques. They learned a relationship to meditation, being in the silence. They learned, salsa, samba, hip hop, rumba, Chicago style stepping, tap, West African dance, and a host of others, samba. And we learned all of these different dance styles because each one kind of preserves a particular aspect of how a particular culture saw itself and interacted with the world around it. How did these different cultures think about music, dance, rhythm, and expressing it? In my opinion, we get so many different slices of life and relationships to space and time by learning these different dance styles and thinking about how people elevated their bodies spiritually through dance. And this became, a very powerful experience. Most of our African diasporic dance encourages, a lot of hip motions, a lot of undulations in the chest. More of the West African movements are very grounded. A lot of our hip hop is very grounded. And these are not just fun movements to do, but they're ways of stimulating the energy centers in our body, whether you want to call them your chakra systems, or you want to talk about relationships that the body has to natural environments, and creating dances around them. Many of our older traditional dances are designed to reflect the wind, or reflect water, or reflect, the trees, or reflect connecting with the ground, connecting with the ancestors. And these elements are, in some ways, sometimes hidden or encoded in our various African diasporic dance styles. So we encourage students to not only learn these moves, but to, just write about how it made them feel. And these were not students whose aim was to become a professional dancer per se, but we did want to develop an appreciation for dance and an appreciation for African diasporic relationships to dance, because I think many of us can attest to the fact that dance has saved lives. Dance has been a moment in refresh in both stress times and slave times. Dance hyped people up for to face and surmount challenges in the past in the same ways that it could be a moment of refresh today. And it's okay to recognize these relationships that dance has had. But in addition to that, we also introduce students to various music styles. And the fun thing about talking about dance is once you talk about dance and you talk about dances coming out of Brazil or Senegal or Bahamas, Jamaica, when you talk about these dances, you also have to talk the history and the context that these dances came out of. And then you have to talk about the musical styles. So children become, or teens become fundamentally cultured, and they get to connect and relate to their bodies simultaneously. You know, so many times we're told that you're not supposed to move a certain way, or Black women or Black children's bodies are sexualized. But the greater connection a person has to their body, the greater sense of self that they can have. And this is a great balance in their intellectual pursuits. So the students in my program, I took them to the Art Museum in Chicago and the Chicago Art Institute. And I took them there because I wanted them to think about the art pieces they were seeing as being these windows in time. They're looking at art pieces that in some cases are 50 years old, 100 years old, thousands of years old. And yet these particular pieces, they're communicating to audiences and all the times in which that piece exists. And the same went for a lot of the dances that the students were learning. You know, they're doing movements that people were doing 20 years ago, 50 years ago, 100 years ago, thousands of years ago. Who knows how old some of these dance movements are? And as the students began reflecting in their journals, they too started to feel like they were, even when they were doing their freestyle dancing or their, you know, dancing, thinking of themselves as being connected to the elements, they felt as if they were dancing for people in the past and for people in the future. And they're looking at artwork by someone like a Charles White. And we, you know, initially they're looking at Charles White's work here, which is called J'accuse. And they were under the impression that he was someone who was about their age, you know, maybe just a few years earlier, because there was a map outside that showed kind of where he lived and where he hung out. And when they realized that these paintings were made 70, 80 years prior to their birth, that Charles White was someone who could have been their grandparent or their great-grandparent, time collapsed for them because they connected so deeply with these images that they suddenly realized Charles White wasn't just creating these works for people of his time. He was creating these works with an awareness there would be in a museum, which means he had an eye towards the future. And this is all of us, sharing, hugging together. But these young ladies and some of the gentlemen who were in the class, although they aren't featured in this photo, came to think about dance as being a very deep experience, and they had a true appreciation for it. And so through thinking about Afrofuturism and thinking about dance and being introduced to this juxtaposition of styles, they too were able to see themselves as individuals who could take agency in the space they're in, but also found that they were in community with people in the past, in the future, and that they too were embodying Sankofa by bringing some of the best dance styles of the past that have saved lives, created happiness, elevated and entertained, and then moving that through their bodies into the future by sharing that with others. And in that sense, dance became very, very sacred and very special. And I've explored dance in other ways as well. I did a film called A Love Letter to the Ancestors from Chicago, where I explored dance as being interdimensional, featuring house music dancers, freestyle dancers. We centered all of the dance work around freestyle. And this was really to kind of juxtapose against the other traditional forms, or even when I was learning rumba, and certain movements are designed specifically to evoke certain energy centers, or to connect with specific elements or specific earthly spiritualized elements. And through freestyle, we often stumble into those sorts of things. But I wanted to celebrate freestyle dance because I think that with respect to the African diaspora, so much of our dance is sometimes centered in freestyle work. This is a fun picture of me and some of the performers pretending to be dance aliens as we went to see a George Clinton concert. And here's a cover for one of my books, Rayla 2212. I can show you more images of Afrofuturism and relationships to body and dance and movement. But I think this is a great time to take a couple of questions to just see what's on your mind, what you're thinking about, and how this connects to some of your work. I can leave you with this image. You can feel free to email me, contact me through Twitter or Instagram or whatever works best with you if you want to talk a little more. But I do want to hear from you now because we are talking about a lot of different ideas. One thing to leave you with before we move on, Chris asked me to share a story about working with a group of kindergarten kids, with a group of fifth graders. And these fifth graders, I was asked to talk to them about Afrofuturism, not to show them dance, but just talk about Afrofuturism. And one of the things that struck me when I asked them about what did they want to see in the future, they kept talking about this element of violence and how they did not want to see violence in the future. And I'm expecting them to talk about spaceships and interstellar travel, but they kept talking about how they don't want to see violence. And it suddenly dawned on me that they were so rooted on what they didn't want to see that they couldn't get into what they wanted to see. And we had this dialogue about really getting them to think about, well, what does a world without violence look like? What does a world where people are harmonious, what does it look like? What does it feel like? What sort of elements have to be a part of your practice for that to be how we engage? And as they discussed these things slowly, well, actually very rapidly, they were able to sort of toss out this layer of not wanting to see violence and then give descriptions of a world that they did want to see. And then I started using the ideas in Afrofuturism as tropes to think about how to treat people, saying things like, well, how do people treat aliens, right? Aliens from outer space in the movies. And they talked about that. And then I said, well, do you want to be treated like an alien? Or do you want to treat people like aliens? And then that became a discussion. And from there, they started talking, I started going more into these aspects of Afrofuturism, talking about house music or electronic music being described as alien music at one point by Kodwo Eshun. And they were saying, oh, well, how can we create alien music? And it became a really fun discussion. And they started, one kid asked me, well, is blues Afrofuturism? I mean, they were really getting deep, seeing suddenly all these relationships between blues and electronic music, or seeing a relationship between their sense of agency. And finally, one girl says, wait, so are you telling us we can create our own future? To which I said, yes. And then the bell rang and they all run out. So we can create our own futures. We can create a future that values dance. And we can also pull from the best of the past in creating new dance styles, but also in highlighting the relationships these dance styles had to time and space, celebrating that and championing it into the future as we come to embody, appreciate, and value the lessons in dance that our ancestors have brought forward. Thank you. So, are there any questions? I'm not sure if I should look at the chat or if someone's going to ask me here, but what I'm going to do is stop sharing here. And I can put my information in the chat too, if you like. Oh, someone's already put it there. Thank you. Shara, I am looking here at the chat, everyone, to see if you're asking questions. I was so happy. Let's see, can I speak more about the healing qualities of dance as it relates to reclamation of our body? Absolutely. A lot of trauma gets locked in our hips. And that's for any number of reasons. I think it's because of sometimes how, you know, it could be, sometimes it's sexual trauma, sometimes it's just trauma of being in spaces and told that you can't, you know, you're being too sexual, or you're interpreted as being sexual just by showing up. So sometimes a lot of trauma is locked in the hips. And in some of the exercises I would do, when I would have working with adults and teens as well, we were just sort of moving our hips. You move from side to side. You rotate your pelvis forward and backward. You shake fast. You shake a little slower. All of those things, it just starts bringing out energy. And even in sessions where I worked with a group once, I had teens tell me, they say, oh, wow, you know, this, when I was moving my hips, I felt like I was releasing something. And there was a freedom in that. Same thing with movement in the chest. You know, I think sometimes a lot of energy gets locked in the chest. That's where your heart is, your heart chakra. And in that movements of undulating the chest, you know, there's a release. But in addition to that release, there's also a healing. I see Shara saying body spiraling mimics our universe spiral. Absolutely. And one of the first dances, which some people forget, was belly dancing. And belly dancing, in, you know, times when we didn't have modern medicine, it helped to increase a certain circulation in the body, to relieve cramps, to ease childbirth. And simultaneously to connect, as you said, Shar, with the circling of the universe. So this is going back to that relationship between time and space. A lot of movements, as I mentioned before, are also movements that mimic natural elements. And that's very cool. So one exercise I would do with the young ladies sometimes would break them down into groups and say, okay, who wants to be a fire goddess? Who wants to be a wind goddess? You know, you take all these elements and ask them to be goddesses and say, okay, great. What kind of dances would you create that mimic the wind? Whining is healing. Whining is healing. Whining is healing. I think, you know, African diasporic dances, all those movements, undulations, they were about stimulating energy centers in our body. And there's our body has an ability to heal itself. And some of this energy there's a release, but then there's also energy as it's just moving across your body. And that as a healing space, I think is very radical. Someone saying when Junkanoo drums kick off or rake and scrape, start our hips, can't help but to move. Absolutely. Absolutely. You can be your own little ball of energy once you connect to dance. And I think, you know, thinking about these movements as connected to the rotations of the earth and to these elements just shows you how sophisticated our ancestors were in coming up with these dances, and our decision to continue to do them and bring them forth is beautiful as well. And is really a testament to the healing power in these movements.
Thank you so much, Natasha. I'm going to invite Faith and Pamela to join us again and to share how this is resonating with our work in the Bahamas. So for me, Natasha, when I saw your work and I thought, okay, Afrofuturism, to me it's about training the mind. Like we can give children all types of skills in their cognitive abilities to think critically, to describe things orderly and structured, to categorize. But at what point in the school day do we teach a development of the creative spirit? Or how do we teach the development of the imagination? And to me, as a dancer, in participating in the creation of dance, I am learning communication, collaboration, creativity. I'm gaining the life skills that I need to bring myself into the future, just as you described in your beautiful, allegory about taking the students. Can you get past the present and into the future? So I think your work really speaks to my work and the work in the Bahamas around developing career criteria that are not related to the subject of dance. We're not teaching Afro-funk or Latin or not, I mean, you could, but what we're really, really teaching are the tools and skills to develop a creative spirit, to have the ability to collaborate with others. And even when times get bumpy, or as we saw today, we had 10 minutes of technical difficulty. Hey, we had to be resilient and keep going. So the arts provides this opportunity for children to learn how to be in the world. So that's my 2 cents. How about my friends? What do you all think?
Yeah, I think it's very interesting because the Bahamas is so immersed in Junkanoo, but we don't really understand what power the Junkanoo has, because it is a direct connection with our ancestors. It's a part of that Sankofa that she was talking about. And anything Bahamian can be channeled through Junkanoo for people to get it in this country, but we don't use it enough as a tool to help with the education and the sense of pride, because everybody's a Junkanoo, and you and Faith are Junkanoos because you rush with colors. And my husband was well into Junkanoo, but they understood that connection to their ground, to their foundation. It was very, very strong. And that is something that you can build on in everything you do in the country. So it's really important.
Absolutely, Pamela. Thank you so much for connecting. So, what is Junkanoo, right? It's an ancestral spiritual dance that is brought over in our bodies. That's something they couldn't take away, were those rhythms. And a conversation, Faith and I were going to church on Sunday when I was down there last month, and the ritual of standing and sitting, right? And so I'm saying, well, okay, if I'm not Anglican and yet I'm participating in these rituals and these routines, what am I gaining from the practice, right, of participating in these rituals? Am I physically, and I think Shar might resonate this, by doing it, am I connecting to myself? And am I connecting to my past and my culture? Particularly if we do it in community, right? If we are doing these things within community, then even more so, we're reinforcing the ideas of culture. So Yatasha, this is phenomenal. Faith?
I just wanted to recall a childhood memory, a ring play. I went to a parochial school, a Christian school, and we were discouraged from engaging in any form of ring play, because we could yak up ourselves and do the yak, all kinds of things in terms of the ring play. So what you talk about in terms of our bodies and spirituality really is phenomenal, because I don't think we take advantage of it enough, and for the benefit of ourselves, really, so thank you for providing that, thought-provoking concept. And I like that idea of this being a healing ritual. It can be a healing ritual because, we're free. It's liberating. And I think that's why so many people like Junkanoo, because it's liberating. The first time I did it with Chris was somebody asked me, well, how was it? Because they've never done it before. And my word was one: liberating. So yeah, I really thank you for what you've presented here today. It's really helped in terms of, okay, let's think outside the box in terms of our bodies, our identity, and our futures.
And I think that's it, Faith. That's exactly what you just said, right? If we're talking about a dominant narrative or a dominant culture in the Bahamas, which is what? Colonialism, right? It's still got a footprint on us. That if we can use these methodologies, this Afrofuturist paradigm, to think outside the box, or to at least recognize, right? What is the thing I've been saying all summer? What is the curriculum currently for dance education in public schools in the Bahamas? It's the English Royal of Academy Ballet syllabus. So if you can't get more dominant culture than that, how interesting or just not interesting is it for a fourth grade boy to be introduced to dance in that way? And why can't I use Junkanoo to introduce the elements and principles of choreography just as easily, but in a way that not only connects with his own culture and identity, but as Yatasha's really reaching, right? Maybe connects him spiritually, right? And sort of, what would we call that? Quantum physics, right? Connects him to his own people, the past and into the future. I'm getting goosebumps. I think you're on it, Yatasha. This is phenomenal. And to see you're an author and a filmmaker and a dance therapist, that is an interdisciplinary lens that I think we really miss when we talk about education and the subjects of reading and math.
And for me, as an Afrofuturist, it helped me to even think of myself as interdisciplinary. Prior to that, they were just these disparate things I'm doing, but Afrofuturism kind of brought it all in for me. And then just to note, to comment on what Pamela and Faith were saying too, dance has been a form of resistance for us in various spaces as well. There was nothing in some of the things that took place over our being brought to the Americas that lent itself for us even remembering these dances, right? So the fact that we're preserving it and insisting on these movements and spaces is really a challenge against sort of the linear thought models or the linear perspectives of time, or some people call it colonized time, but certainly these colonized thought processes that we often find ourselves moving through.
I think it's time for us to move on. Yatasha, if you would release a slide presentation back to me, I think you have the power to make that happen.
I did.
Okay, fantastic. So I'll share my screen. And because, you friends, that conversation was so very heavy and given us so much to think about, host has disabled participant screen sharing. Oh, not me. Let's try it one more time. Free me, or make me host maybe.
Let's see. I can't make you host. Whoever made me host.
That was me.
Then you might have to, so I need to go make you host?
I think because I made you host, I disabled myself from hosting.
Oh, gee. Now that's a kicker.
Yes, you have to give the hosting back to her. Just click on the name and you'll see it on the side.
Okay, got it. Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Look at us mastering the Afrofuturism technologies that have been provided to us during COVID. Let's all get it together, right? We're learning to share. And I just want to thank everybody again for coming today. We got a little bit of a rough start, but man, Yatasha, we're in the flow now. Now we are in the flow. Oh, look, I'm the host now.
I know. You've got the control of the reins.
Thank you so much. So, in this collaborative effort, the Shirley Hall Bass Dance Educators Forum is a professional learning community. We're advocating, we're providing information for the group to be able to go and ask for these things, to ask of government, to ask of the principals, to ask of the teachers, where is the performing arts education? What is the plan? Because at this time, it's just beginning. We've been working with the Ministry of Education. I have some surprise videos from some of our leaders at the ministry. They understand. But to make this work last, we also have to get our legislators involved. Let's take a little break. This music is by a very good friend and collaborator, the founder of Colors Junkanoo Group, also a professor of music at the University of the Bahamas. It is our friend Chris Justillian. And the quotes that you're going to see in pink throughout the presentation are what? These are Pamela Burnside's husband, Jackson Burnside, incredible author, incredible architect, artist. I mean, wow, Pamela, what a guy you've had in your life, and is supporting us with his words. So take a moment, stretch your legs, go get a drink of water. We got a minute and 20 seconds to think about all those deep thoughts that Yatasha has brought on us. Thank you. So we're going to introduce Faith's section now, and Faith is presenting some research regarding the work she's been doing with the students at the University of the Bahamas. Thank you so much, Faith. Are you ready to roll? You're going to take over the sharing. Can you try sharing now?
Okay, great. I thought I'd introduce my presentation with that a little drum excerpt from the Ministry of Youth and Culture 2019, a performance, and that was actually produced by one of our honorees today. We will hear from later on. So I thought that that would be interesting, and it just shows the magnitude. Let me stop that. Just shows the magnitude of our cultural ability in terms of what we can do musically, drama, which I'm not showing today, but just from a young age, we see these children who are engaging in arts and drumming. And again, this is a homage to Howard Bethel, who is no longer with us, who led the drummers at that particular time. And so today I'm looking at a literature review. What does the published evidence say about arts integrated education? And I'll preface that with saying that I have to acknowledge my students who helped me in completing a review of the literature, and they did not like reading about the research too much, but they found interesting information, and some of them changed attitudes as a result. So when we looked at the literature, the published literature, we found that there were variations on what arts integration really is. Among the 30 studies that we looked at, they all seem to mention or come to the agreement that at least there was some collaboration between the art specialists and the regular content area teachers. So I just picked out a definition that kept appearing over and over again in the literature review. And I don't think it was first mentioned in 2014 by Ken Day. It really, I saw it earlier, even though it wasn't a part of our review of literature. I saw it earlier in published research earlier than 2014. So the definition here, arts integration is an approach to teaching in which students construct and demonstrate understanding through an art form. Students engage in a creative process which connects an art form and another subject that kept coming up, art form and another subject area, and meets evolving objectives in both. So when we look at the objectives in both, what are the standards and objectives in terms of arts education? What are the standards and objectives in terms of other subject areas? So just creating a balance between the two. And the photo that you're viewing is a recent photo of what I term as collaboration and problem solving in these students at the T.G. Glover Professional Development and Research School. And this is during a math lesson, and they are trying to now build a marshmallow tower, and they now have to collaborate and see how tall they can get this tower using these marshmallows and spaghetti noodles. So when we look at the arts integration, again, in terms of the definitions, we see that the literature talked about specific areas that comprised arts education: dance, music, visual arts, theater or drama, and then even media arts. And as I looked at this literature, that was one that struck me because I didn't really think of media arts per se in terms of arts education, just the regular, but that was pretty good to see that. And all of these areas relate to creating, right? Performing or presenting in some way, and that's where that media arts comes in, responding in some way, and connecting in some way. So we see these commonalities between the literature that we actually analyzed. Then next, in terms of the context and the considerations, the types of research questions were, of course, varied because they were different. They were different studies, but there were studies that looked at content, particular content areas. How does art enhance mathematics, for example? How does it enhance special education? That was one that really struck my attention. How does it impact students, particularly academic performance? That was throughout the literature, academic performance. That's what we want to see. How does it impact academic performance? Because we want our students to do well on these standardized tests and on other areas that are not arts related. And then how does it relate to teachers and non-arts teachers, right? So how do we, particularly, how does it impact them, and what is it that can be done so that they are immersed in art themselves to be comfortable enough to infuse art in their teaching of the particular content areas. Okay, so the research questions were varied in that regard, and I'm just going to pull up somewhere here. There was a particular article by Ludwig, 2019, that looked at African-American males. And I must say right here that as we looked at the literature, we did not find much on, well, actually none in this era from 2012 to 2021, which was the set of articles that we looked at that related to Caribbean arts education. And that's going to be our next move, to look at what's in the region. What can we find in the region that relates to Caribbean arts education? So we looked at different research questions. How does, for example, how does arts impact African male identity, right? Would be an example. Then methodologies that they utilized. How did they go about conducting these studies? Again, very varied. Some of them looked at case studies where they looked at one particular school or one particular class of students. Several looked at experimental studies where they had a comparison class with a comparison with another class, or even a school with another school. Others looked at narrative inquiry where they interviewed teachers and students and even parents about arts education programs that were implemented and what they saw as the benefits. Others looked at focus groups and observations, of course, because you're going into the classrooms to observe what's going on in these classrooms, and then survey data. So there was a myriad of different methodologies that were utilized to gather the information to get at the results. Implementation. How did the researchers go about implementing or studying arts education? Again, because it's 30 studies, they did it in different ways. Some of them, there were lots of advocates that were mentioned in the articles. For example, Project AIM by Columbia University in Chicago, the National Endowment of the Arts, the NEA. Arts in Charter Schools was another organization. Everyday Arts for Special Education was another organization, advocacy organization that had grants or programs that utilize pilot programs or full-fledged programs to implement the particular studies. So this actually goes along with the methodologies in terms of how they implemented the studies. After getting all of the ethics out of the way, for example, permissions from parents and guardians, they were able to go into classrooms to observe, to interview teachers, to actually look at what was going on. And then the implementation corresponded with the research question. So if they were looking at males and identity and arts education, they also looked at what were the strategies that they could utilize to implement the particular methodologies. One study that caught my attention was that special ed, where they actually looked at the students who were deaf and how they could respond to different arts, not just dance, but actually, even if they were deaf, the vibrations from the music and what that did. There was another study that looked at a particular student who was not speaking at all in class, or not speaking in the hallways, or communicating with anyone. But as soon as he got into drama, he became alive. And the teacher said, his regular teacher said, he never speaks. So we see the power of this arts education as we look at it. Then in terms of equity and access, this is a biggie. Because if we want to encourage 21st century skills, which was a buzzword throughout the literature, 21st century skills, meaning not just content area skills as in math, English, science, and language arts, but also what we call soft skills or social emotional learning skills, where we have empathy, endurance, discipline, all of those kinds of things. If we want to grow these citizens, these students who become future citizens of our countries, then this equity and access is huge. When the studies looked at equity and access, they noticed that it was, of course, the schools that had the resources, that had the grants, that had the endowments, that had these opportunities for arts education. And not just arts education in terms of an extracurricular activity, but really going full-fledged into teacher training so that the teacher feels confident enough to infuse arts every day as arts as curriculum. So that equity and access was a biggie in terms of what the literature had to say. And I should be mentioning names, which I have listed down here. And then the lasting impact of arts education. Several of the studies, actually there are only two of them, that looked at the lasting impact of arts education, even though the others mentioned it precursively in relation to the long-lasting effects. Two particularly looked at it specifically. And they noticed that those who had participated in arts education activities still participated in arts activities after they left school and were more likely to go to college or pursue further training in an area, even if it wasn't a college per se, to develop a particular skill that was more prevalent if they participated in arts education or were exposed to arts education at the primary and secondary level. Okay, so just a little aside, a little fun for you. Let me put it in the chat. Here's a Mentimeter challenge for you. I'd like to know what you think. What you think would be the challenges of arts integration, particularly because we're talking about the Bahamian context. What would be the challenges for arts education in the Bahamas. And I'm going to paste it in the chat if you would go to this link.
And so while our guests are connecting to the link, Faith, we are going to go to our next slide and do a little pause because Courtney is here and has a very short time to join us right now at 2:30 or 3:30, which it is in the Bahamas. And so if you guys could go to your thementimeter.com and help out with answering those questions. Faith, if you could turn over the presentation back to me, please. And we'll come back to you and have you summarize that Mentimeter, if that's okay.
Welcome, Courtney. Let me introduce her to our audience. Courtney Celeste Spears, who is of Bahamian descent, is a professional dancer with the world-renowned Alvin Ailey American Dance Theater and has performed in over 15 countries around the world. She graduated summa cum laude with honors from the Ailey Fordham BFA program with a degree in dance and communications media studies, and recently completed Harvard Business School's crossover into business program. She was also nominated for a New York Emmy for her leading role in the Black Iris Project's A Mother's Right. She has been featured in high-end fashion publications as a sign model with Wilhelmina Models. As a dedicated mentor and entrepreneur, Courtney is the co-founder and director of her own company, Artsy Dance, which brings world-class dance entertainment and education annually to the Bahamas. She aims to empower young dancers to think outside of the box and continues to use her own platform to uplift the next generation of artists.
Courtney is here, but I would like to invite Courtney to join on camera, as well as Shanae May Comer, who is our representative from the Bahamas Dance Association. And is Courtney in the chat? Can you check that for me, Marie? So what we're going to do next is we're really excited. This is our first year, Faith and I, when we first realized how many struggles and problems there were in terms of making sure that there was quality and accessible performing arts education in the Bahamas, we were connected by Pamela Burnside to Courtney Spears. And Courtney, thank you so much for joining us. There she is. I'm gonna turn my camera off, and so that you can tell us a little bit about yourself and your work. Thank you.
Hi everyone. First of all, can you hear me? Okay, good. Hi.
Yes, we can.
For running around looking a little bit crazy. Here, let me see if I can get some better lighting. There we go. Hi everyone, my name is Courtney Celeste Spears, and I am a dancer with the Alvin Ailey American Dance Theater. I'm also the co-founder and director of Artsy Dance. And I'm also Bahamian. My mom is from Nassau. Yes, I'm in Freeport actually this weekend at the Bahamas Dance Theater. Freeport forever. I know there's a lot of Freeport pride. They love it here. I'm here doing actually my first ever teaching workshop at the Bahamas Dance Theater here in Freeport. And it's just been so wonderful. Artsy started 6 years ago. I co-founded it with my brother, Asa Carey, who did all of the logistics and has a career in events and marketing, and brought the idea to him as a way to take the world that I was fortunate enough to live in and dancing with Ailey and see the whole world, and bring a part of that to the Bahamas to just help further the conversation surrounding dance and arts and wellness, and just really kind of give students a space to know that the arts are a career option. It's a way to get your education. I'm sitting here looking at my beautiful sister in dance, Shanae Comer, went to NYU, and the Bahamas Dance Association. We've talked about this so many times together, how, dance took us to the big city, it got us our education, it's made us both be able to travel and just really kind of reach people in a really special way. And so Artsy's in its 6th year, and I see so many people who've continued to support Artsy on here. Dr. Butler, and Chris, Carol, who donated this year for a student, Ms. Pam Burnside, who's a great friend of mine and a great friend of my grandmother's, Andra. Sweeting and Ms. Delvo Grant and so many people, the ministry who continue to support us. And we're just so grateful to be here and to be in our 6th year and so grateful for this forum that continues to talk about dance and how we can continue to support our youth and can support our nation with the arts.
Thank you, Courtney. We also have, and forgive me, Pamela, if I'm stepping on your toes. I'm just going forward. You can interrupt me at any time. We're also being joined today by Shanae May Comer. Shanae, I was introduced to just about 2 years ago. She's recently received her degree from New York and a graduate degree in dance education, which is really exactly what we're looking for. So Shanae, if you're here, I'd like you to come on camera as well. And I hope she's here.
Hi,
Here she is.
I'm here.
So Shanae is from the Bahamas Dance Association. Can you tell us just a little bit about that? And then I'll bring up your screen for the awards criteria that we gave to Courtney's student.
Sure. So the Bahamas Dance Association was founded to be a support system for Bahamians in the Bahamas. We plan workshops very similar to what everyone here is trying to do, just bring awareness to dance education, dance in the Bahamas, and just promote and advocate for the performing arts, right? So we are a support system for dancers to come together and dance, learn from each other, teach each other. That's who we are. So we're very, very, very excited to come together in partnership with the Shirley Hall Bass Foundation for this amazing scholarship opportunity. We are offering, in partnership with Shirley Hall Bass Foundation, 3 scholarships, 1 tertiary dance education fund, secondary for study abroad for high school students, and primary to offer private studio lessons for a student in the Bahamas. This is just so exciting. We're so happy to finally be getting this, started and moving to award very, very deserving dancers with this opportunity.
Thank you, Shanae. And now let's see how my technology is going to treat me today. We're going to shift. Look at that. Did it happen? I think it happened. So our awardee is Ocean Montesino. He's 13 years old. He is from Nassau, Bahamas. And as Shanae just described, our middle scholarship is for dancers who are really proficient, really getting ahead of the game and need additional supports and training. Artsy has got phenomenal programming. I am going to click, I believe I'm going to, oh, nope, I knew it. I'm going to click on a link. And it is going to take us to, and let's do it.
That dance is beautiful. It's a career option.
I love that when I dance, it's the best way to create personal feeling. Like I'm in the zone when I dance, and it's only me, nobody else. And it's the best feeling.
Because it makes me feel whole, it helps me mentally, and it's always been something that I love to do since I was small.
And what's wonderful is as we prioritize dance in different classes, jazz, ballet, hip hop, modern, we also are really big on giving dancers tools and practical applications to take forward. So
Courtney has really been really inspiring to me, and she is really very loose and energetic, and she's very encouraging.
I like to say that artsy dance is for everyone. It is for people who love to move and love to dance. I like to say if you wake up in the morning and you think about dance, and you go to bed at night and you think about dance, you are a dancer. So whether you are young or you're an adult or in between, please, artsy dance is for you.
Artsy! How fun was that, y'all? Okay, so Courtney, again, thank you for being such a phenomenal partner in our work. We are so happy to be able to sponsor a student and again, a meal student. We're talking about equity and we're talking about access. And we know full well that there are stereotypes around boys dancing, boys participating in dance. And so I really just appreciate your courage and your tenacity and our shared vision of making dance happen in the Bahamas. So virtual applause for everybody. And it's time for us to take it back to Faith and see what her Mentimeter is going to share. So Faith, I am going to turn over the responsibilities to you again so that you can share.
To go to the Mentimeter and to respond to the question, what do you think are the top 3 challenges to arts integration in the Bahamas? So in the Bahamas, you think that the top 3, well, now we got 4, 5, 6, and 7, because I put 7 in there. Limited resources is number 1. Cultural beliefs. I'm not surprised, but cultural beliefs, attitudes towards education, towards arts education. Okay, and they probably overlap with the cultural beliefs. Lack of training in arts education, that's the 4th. Fantastic. Scripted curricula. What I mean by scripted curricula is that we have these curriculum guides that we follow, so that our students can take the GLAD exam, which is the 3rd grade, and the GLAD exam, which is the 6th grade again, and then the BJC, which is at 9th grade, and then the BGCSE, which is at 12th grade. So we have these, scripts per se, it's curriculum, but definitely I know in looking at other literature, that has been a concern in terms of standardized tests being an obstacle to being creative in teaching. Okay, and then standardized tests and then other. Okay, so limited resources. Fantastic, thank you for that. So, take a picture of that. I'm gonna stop share, let's see what you think about it. I'd like to now share what was found in the literature. Now this is based on US and European studies in terms of the challenges that were that teachers and others had said about. Let me get back to it here. That were the major challenges for them. Okay, so you saw what we thought about the Bahamas. Now let's look at what we found in the literature, what the research said, what the US and European literature said, just 30 studies, not all the studies, but 30, a select group of studies from 2012 to 2021. Access to resources was number 1, right? And so you're right on that. It's very similar, right? You said limited resources. Knowledge of strategies was number 2 in terms of the challenges and the ranking. Standardized tests, teaching to that test. Scripted curricula, 3 and 4. Need for ongoing training and certification. Teachers said they couldn't just participate in one program and be expected to continue teaching arts infusion, but they needed ongoing professional development to do this. And then time and space limitations was the final one of the 6 top. Time and limitations. They felt that they were constrained by time to be able to balance art with the content area material. So thank you for participating in that little challenge there. And right on, access to resources is a big all worldwide. Thank you for that. Okay, so next, benefits. We've got the challenges now. We know what the challenges are. What does the research say about the benefits? And not surprisingly, student engagement and motivation. One thing that the literature, particularly Schlertz and Bresvonik, they mentioned that student engagement and motivation is, of course, going to be different for all students. And they caution teachers to not expect all students to be motivated for the same thing. Everyone's not going to be interested in visual arts. Everyone's not going to be interested in music or dance. But to help students find their niche or their area of interest, and then to cater the instruction to those areas as much as we can. Creative inquiry. Of course, again, another 21st century skill that was throughout the literature, being creative, and not only creative. Oh, sorry, something is, okay, great. Okay, so creative inquiry in terms of not just being creative in what they produce, but also being creative in what they are questioning or what they are trying to find out. And that's that Afrofuturism again, right? Taking it a little bit further than just a question, but what specifically are you wanting to find out, and how is that going to impact you in the future? Self-directed learning. The researchers found that as the students participated in arts integration, they began to now self-direct their learning. They began to be more independent in what they selected to learn, and more independent in terms of not being glued to the teacher for all the questions that they had. They were able to now go and search out for themselves in a creative way, because they wanted to be creative in that sense. Willingness to take risks without fear or judgment. They had now this arts atmosphere now created an environment where these students felt like home. They were home, and they felt like they were within a community, and they felt that no one was judging them. And as they got, and you know, this came about over a period of time, they felt that they were able to take risks without being ridiculed or bullied. And they felt that it was like a team effort. Enhanced self-identity and cultural awareness. This was particularly in relation to the studies that concentrated on a particular ethnicity. So for instance, the study that looked at African-American males found that self-identity and their awareness of their own cultures increased as a result, because they were now exposed to aspects through this arts integration, were now exposed to aspects of different cultures, including their own, that were relevant to them. So it makes sense. And then next, ongoing teacher collaboration. Again, the teacher said they needed the collaboration, but they found that a benefit of arts integration was ongoing teacher collaboration with the arts specialists and with other teachers in planning and in instruction. And then one that we always want to see, a change in attitude toward art integration. And as you mentioned in the Mentimedia Challenge there, cultural, perhaps some type of, mindset culturally, which relates to our attitudes, is an obstacle to arts integration in the Bahamas. So they saw as a benefit a change, gradual change in attitudes towards arts integration, not just students and not just teachers, not just administrators, but parents, because parents were now saying, okay, I could see this. And they were now not fully concentrating on, okay, you can't make no money. It's not economic for you to want to do anything in the arts, but now being more liberal in terms of what they felt about their children pursuing arts. And finally, okay, Afrofuturism and performing arts education in the Bahamas. We heard the wonderful presentation by Natasha in terms of Afrofuturism. So what does this mean now for us in the Bahamas if we're going to now look at advocating for performing arts education? How does this now impact the concept of Afrofuturism? We know that, or we've seen from the little anecdotes from, not little, but very meaningful anecdotes from Jackson Burnside, that our country is culturally rich. So how do we now take advantage of our culturally rich nation, our culturally rich people, and take it to that step or that concept of Afrofuturism, where we are developing, where we are imagining, where we are creating for our healing, for our economics, for ourselves, for our nation, for nation building. And I think that's where I'm going to leave it, because I believe that I am out of time, but it has been a pleasure to look at these articles and being so motivating and more inspiring to see what is being done more and more in arts education as sustainable. So thank you.
Thanks, Faith. If you could turn that hosting over again, we will ask Pamela to come on in and join us. I think what's going to happen next is a short discussion. We are running over. We're already making it to the 3 o'clock time. So if we could have a short discussion about the implications of research. I think it's really important to have a balance, right, of the research that we are conducting as educators, but also the narrative inquiry, that Sankofa approach of looking back at, data is research, right? So it's Sankofa, research is important. Pamela, what could we do?
Well, there's so much work to be done, but we have to start, as we say in the Bahamas, from the first beginning, because until we recognize our past and our foundation, as we talk about the Afrofuturism, until we recognize that and the importance of that, for the development of the country. Everyone's throwing around the orange economy word, but a lot of people are not actually doing anything with it. We have to put it into practice. And the powers that be, that are the ones who make those decisions, they need to get on board. They need to listen to us, the cultural people, to understand that without the arts, the country will not develop. It's a simple formula. And I mean, it's been too many years. I'm just so tired of fighting, the powers that be to make it happen. So we need to do it on our own and let them catch up with us.
Here, 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 here. We have other participants who have presented today. We've got Shanae, we've got Darika in the house. Do you guys have any, Yatasha? I mean, we're American girls from Chicago, right? But I think we both, and this is what Pamela's talking about. If you haven't experienced, we're preaching to the choir. If you have not experienced the arts in your life, and you have only had a dominant narrative cultural experience of education, where you're told to sit in a desk, push a pencil, and follow directions, right? Then we're really going to have a hard time with this nation building, all right? Because we're not thinking creatively, and we're not thinking out of the box. Is there anything significant in the chat? I know I have Melanie Maldonado watching our Facebook chat, as well as Shara. But if not, we can press right on. So thank you, Faith, for sharing all of that data with us. I'm going to try and share my screen again, because, oh my goodness, the host has disabled screen sharing. Let's see if we can change it one more time. Nope, I'm not the host.
It's Pam. Pam will have to change it to you.
You made Pam the host?
Yes, I did.
So Pam, would you mind making me the host so I could present the next part of the presentation?
I like the questions, and maybe we can come to those at the end.
Mm-hmm. There's Melanie Maldonado. Use co-host instead of host. I wish I could, friend. It's not giving me that option, and I think it's because I'm in a webinar.
Okay, you're the host now.
Thank you. I think it's because of the webinar presentation. I wish I knew why it's not allowing a co-host option, but it's not. It's not. I can't. Next year, the forum's going to be in person, y'all. We won't have to be struggling like this ever again. So let's get back into the presentation. And I'm going to get into the next slide. And that's me. Oh my gosh, it's my turn. finally, here I go. I have been doing sort of the Sankofa portion of this research, the going back into the past, and Lavinia Williams was my subject. Lavinia Williams became my subject because in the 2019 interviews that we did with the Shirley Hall Bass project, the first project where we got her people together, yes, they were talking about Shirley. Yes, they were there enthusiastic about Shirley. But the problem, I think, was that another name kept coming up, right? And that other name was Lavinia Williams. I shouldn't say it was a problem, it was a curiosity, right? I was like, who is this? So I started doing research, and I wanted to start my presentation off with this incredible resource. If Shar could drop this in the chat, this is a Constellation Project. It's a group of Black women who are collecting stories about Black ballet dancers, and they have created this incredible diagram, right? And if I click on this, it should take me, and still in presentation mode, to the website. So I can see that that's happening. Any Black ballet dancer you can think of, Lavinia Williams, there's a huge cachet of Black ballerinas from Philadelphia, where Lavinia was originally born. But I'd like to share this resource with our professional learning community as a resource that you could share with your students, because for me, the issue with presenting dance in schools and performing arts integration is the belief that if you can't do it, if I'm a teacher and I'm not a good dancer, a teacher, not a good actor, a teacher, not a director, if I don't have that training, which frankly, most of us do not because of the dominant cultural narrative in our educational paradigm, if I have not been given that opportunity to think outside of the box and think creatively, then as a teacher, why would I present that opportunity for my students? So I am pushing against the envelope. When we talk about dance education, when we talk about performing arts education, what I'm asking the educators and our advocates to be really clear about is that it's not just doing it, it's about knowing it. It's about understanding it. It's about setting it in its context. It's about understanding where these dances and these cultural influences intersect. It's about understanding the process and even being able just to speak about it, to see a performance and have an opinion and to express that opinion, or even further, to make connections to your own culture about what that performance represented. That's performing arts education. So stretch your minds outside of just the doing of dance and include the understanding. So check it out. I'm going to click on the watch the animation again, y'all, because I'm very excited how this goes with our Afrofuturistic theme. This is the biography of Lavinia Williams. You can see that she is related very closely to the Catherine Dunham Company, which I will share with you, but also tangentially to Josephine Baker. I'll speak about that. She was in a show that went on tour, a USO show, Shuffle Along, that Josephine Baker was in decades before when she was 16 years old. And Lavinia was invited to restage Shuffle Along that Josephine Baker performed in as they took it on a European tour. She came to these works quite often because of her close proximity with Catherine Dunham. But you see that she was also there with Agnes DeMille, that had, in the time of segregation, a Negro unit, right, of the American Ballet Theater Company, which was an all-Black repertory company. So you can see the Haitian Institute of Folklore and Dance. We'll talk a little bit about that. That's the institution that before she came to the Bahamas, Lavinia Williams started dance programming and national dance schools at 4 different countries, Jamaica, Haiti, before coming to Montserrat, and Guyana, before coming to the Bahamas to do this work. If you look at this animation, you can also see her daughter is Sarah Yarborough Smith. And she was an Alvin Ailey dancer trained by her mother and had a very prolific career that actually had 2 sections with the Alvin Ailey Dance School. So it's just an amazing sort of way to look at someone's career and experiences. And as I'm looking at Shirley's influences on all these fantastic Bahamian dancers like Lawrence Carroll and Miss Josie, Victoria Josie, we can see that it really is about relationships. I'm going to click on the watch again, and then I'll go ahead with my presentation because I know we're so short on time. But here I want to mention also, as you zoom in, notice the Harkness Ballet Company. When I was reading the diaries of Rebecca Harkness at the Schomburg Center, she was talking about extensive experience that she had in the Bahamas working with Freddie Munnings. She's also one of the sort of related related to the establishment of the Joffrey Ballet School in New York, and then sort of stole all of those dancers when she created her own Harkness Ballet Company, which Lavinia Williams' daughter was a part of. So all of these connections. I'm going to continue with my presentation, but I just wanted to give you an overarching view of this life of this incredible woman that I have been studying. So back to the slideshow, and we're there, and it's the next slide. Where's my little biography? This is not refreshed. There's something totally wrong here. Hold on, friends. Hold on, friends. I'm going to close that up, and I'm going to reopen that document so we can see it properly. This has been the most wild. Didn't we try, Pamela, to get it? We tried. I apologize, friend. I apologize. We had rundowns and programs, but I'm just going to refresh my screen very quickly for you guys. I don't think you can see it. Can I get some? Oh yeah, there it is. So let's get to where we are in this program and pick it up and finish it up. I'm the last. We have an awards to present, and we're done. So from the Constellation Project, thank you so much. It's a funny little version. From the Constellation Project, I wanted to share with you a little bit about Lavinia. So she was, you know, when we talk about African diaspora culture and we're pushing against the dominant culture, I think we as Black people know that it takes a village, right? And so she was born to teenage parents in Pennsylvania in 1916. And those young parents did what most young parents do, is they leaned into the next generation above them. And so she was sent to Portsmouth, Virginia to live with her grandmother. Her grandmother was a cleaning woman. And one of the women she happened to clean for, lucky for Lavinia, was a Vaganova-trained Russian ballet teacher. And she, because of segregation, could not take classes with the other students at this ballet school. But because of her incredible flexibility and her ability, just incredible, the Russian ballet teacher took her on and trained her from the age of 3 until middle school when the family moved to New York. Of course, New York is a cultural metropolitan area and a metropolis. And so she was able to find a lot of opportunities. And it's really quite remarkable when you look at her history of who she performed with. Having gone to Washington Irving High School, they had a lot of performing arts companies, including like the Denishon Dance Company, that she participated in extended day programming. She was going after school every day to high school to participate in that modern dance company's methodology and style. And then she was very quickly discovered by Eugene von Grona, who was a European Austrian ballet dancer who formed the Negro Ballet Company in 1934. She also performed and was discovered through that experience by Agnes de Mille, who was a woman, as I've read in her biography and done some presentations about her, a kind of rich, woke white woman. She was very much about representing people of color, not in the same way as the Denishon Company. Here's an example of the Denishon dancers, and they were very much, as an organization, it's Ruth St. Denis and Ted Shawn, white dancers, but this was a time in the early 20s, prior to Lavinia's joining their group, where you could see the transcendental movement in the United States of America. They were very interested in the exotic. They were interested in India. They were interested in Africa, but only in terms of Egypt. And a lot of their dances were frankly just cultural appropriations and stylizations of others' dance forms and religious practices. So the WAPA project, if you're not familiar, is that during wartime, the United States government made a lot of money available for arts programming and other sort of infrastructural projects like bridges and things, but they had the foresight to include arts. And so plays were written, dances were done, and the Denishon Dance Company, which was quite well known at this time, which had been in the 30s, found Lavinia Williams in high school and what imparted to her this idea of cultural dancing, right? That dance has to do with a place and a people, that she would have been exposed to that in high school. As I mentioned, she was also, I mean, can you imagine finding Lavinia Williams having had this Russian ballet teacher, and then Van Grona comes along and says, oh, you, the one with the 8 years of training, let's go. He established the Negro Ballet in 1937 in New York. The crazy part of my story very quickly when I was doing this research in New York at the Schomburg Center is that this Lafayette Theater that I found, I just want to throw this out there, was turned into a church. They had a performance space, they had a rehearsal hall. It was a fantastic building over on 135th Street. And my great-grandfather was the one responsible for the transformation. He was a pastor from going from a nightclub and a theater to a church, which is going to be celebrating their like 103rd year this fall, and naming a street after him. I couldn't help but put that in there because my research is overlapping in the most interesting and fantastic ways. You cannot see Lavinia in this picture. I have been really becoming more and more familiar with her as I scroll through these historic photographs looking for a young Lavinia. So again, this is the Negro Ballet Company from 1937, and I'm feeling the Ailey, right? In just these beautiful Black bodies, you know, in unison, in extension. You can see a Lavinia here. There's a bit of a smudge, ink smudge on her face from the way the copy was stored, but that's Lavinia, very young Lavinia, in a fantastic portrait of the ballerinas that Van Grana was working with. Because money and people had to work, okay, there's an interesting parallel between Lavinia, my great aunt Shirley, as well as Catherine Dunham, who's significant to this story, and that is that they were showgirls. They wanted ballet, they wanted performance, they wanted art, but they also had to make a living. And so I might be assuming something, but they were shake dancers. And these were plentiful nightclubs from, you know, the Lafayette Theater had things like this. You know about the Cotton Club. There are a number of theaters. And Lavinia performed, as did Shirley, as did Catherine Dunham during hard times, as a more erotic dancer. And so what does it mean? And this is part of my research. What does it say? What are the dances that we do for ourselves as Black people, as people of the African diasporic community, dances that we do for ourselves, whether it's ritual dance or cultural dance or folkloric dance, versus how we respond to the dominant narrative of sexualized, hypersexualized, hyperfeminine, you know, to what extent are we able to use our own culture as a commodity? So when she was dancing with Agnes DeMille in the Negro unit of the American Ballet Company, Catherine Dunham, who was already famous and had already traveled to Haiti, had already studied anthropology at the University of Chicago, Catherine Dunham saw Lavinia and said, you're it, come with me. And within 1943 to 1948, Lavinia became, from all of my reading and all of my notes, Catherine Dunham's right hand, from doing her costumes to notating her choreography. Something that I didn't mention, and Natasha might get a kick out of this because Natasha is such an interdisciplinary artist, is that when Lavinia was in high school, prior to going to graduate, she was awarded a full scholarship to study visual art and actually was pursuing that when a friend invited her to come dance with the Negro Ballet with Van Grana, because, you know, she had this great body, she had all this ballet training, but what kind of mind did Lavinia have to be a scholarship student for visual art, a professionally trained ballerina, ready to showgirl? Catherine Dunham saw that in her and had her running the Catherine Dunham School of Dance in New York, in addition to being on tour with the dancers from 1943 to 1948. Catherine Dunham, of course, in a very similar way to the Denishon Dance Group, was about ethnographic research, even more so than the Denishon dancers, who did not travel as Catherine Dunham did to do her research. Tali Beatty was another dancer in the group at the time Lavinia was working and had a huge influence on Lavinia's work and practice. They taught together at the Catherine Dunham School. And because Catherine was famous in her life, they were getting lots of calls all the time. Catherine, can you come do this? Catherine, can you come do that? So one of the calls that came to the dance studio was this call to go on the USO tour with Shuffle Along. There's a Sammy Dyer connection because many of those Shuffle Along dancers, including the composer and the dancers, as I said, oh, I've lost her name, friends, Banana Dance, oh my goodness. There is a history of connected performative Black dance on Broadway going on tour. Within our educational philosophy, this is a work in progress, but Madame Lavinia was a culturally responsive practitioner. She got a phone call one day at the Catherine Dunham studio and it said, we'd like to have Catherine Dunham come to Haiti She was here in 1939. We'd like her to come back and open a national dance school. Catherine couldn't do it. She was too busy shooting films for MGM, having a very successful touring life. But you know what? Lavinia said, I'll go. And so she originally got a short contract for 3 months to do a performance and presentation, and eventually got the Ministry of Culture to collaborate with the Ministry of Education to bring her down for 2 years, at which time she established the National Institute of Dance in Haiti. It was so successful. It was so successful that she went on to establish schools, as I said, in Montserrat, in Jamaica, in Guyana. And here she is teaching at Jacob's Pillow, which is another Sammy Dyer connection, because our student, Jamani Taylor, was just there last month performing at Jacob's Pillow for the second time. So her teaching practice, I have been interviewing her students. And so I'm not going to say anything else. I'm going to leave my little screen here, and I'm going to share a short film that I'm working on with the interviews that I have done with her students. So I'm going to share this instead. I'm going to stop share. And what's up, friend? Go back to your Zoom. I'm going back to my Zoom. I've got some coaching here. I'm going to share my screen. And there's my iMovie. Look at that. So here y'all guys go. This is a work in progress. Let's see if we can make it happen. This is Lavinia Williams teaching. And you saw this image used previously.
Lavinia was, oh, okay. My recollection of Madame Lavinia, she was larger than life. She was able to bring out of people who perhaps didn't even know that they had it in them. She was able to bring that out of them. She had such passion for not only the dance, but she had passion for the culture, for the people, for the history. And when I look at persons like Victoria Josie and Lawrence Carroll, you know, they were so connected to Madame Lavinia. And it would be fascinating to see anything that's going to pay homage to such an influencer. You know, she was here for 2 years, but her influence was so far and wide and great that she may as well have been here for 50 years.
Well, she was very dignified in her approach. I like the way she always used to wear her leotard back in front. So, which means that it always came up here to her top of her chest, but there's a big scoop was in the back. So her back was always out, and she had her hair always tied in a turban type thing. Always this black turban was on her head, and she never wore a skirt. She wore leotards and tights. All right, and she was short. And like we all are after we get a certain age, a little chubby in the stomach area, but that was her, you know. And she did what she had to do, and her rhythms, and her natty, Nathaniel Small, the drummer at the time, she, I guess, passed the same voodoo Haitian rhythms. She sent that through Nathaniel Small, who was a drummer. And that's how she taught her classes, was all to drums. Yeah, but the music that she was using, each rhythm had a name.
Yes.
There was the Igbo.
Yes.
And everything had a name, and each one of those names have a rhythm. So when you had to do the Igbo, he played the Igbo. So you know, once the Igbo is playing, you know what you had to do, because you had learned not to do. That's just how she taught it. So each one of those rhythms had a name. And each of those names had a drumming rhythm. So Natty always knew what he had to play, because she would just say, okay, we do the Igbo. And that's how she taught. And she always taught to the drum music, to the drummer.
Did you ever get a sense Okay, well, first of all, she was always.
I had the slide in the wrong place. This is David Bowen. He's a professional dancer, and after his dance career, he became the director of culture for the island of Turks and Caicos and has been a very generous contributor. And Lawrence Carroll, who was speaking previously, you all know very well, both of these men overlapped in their experience with Lavinia, who made sure that every time there was an opportunity in New York, because she went back and forth between the islands and New York City, she would extend these opportunities over and over again to her dancers.
Adamant that you call her Madam Lavinia Williams, you know, Madam this and Madam that. I met Madam Lavinia when there was a time in the Bahamas when there was an arts festival. This is back in the 70s. And at that time, I had just started dancing with Lois Seiler in Freeport. She kind of discovered that I had dance abilities through watching me doing yoga and also dancing with Sanford and Company, which was a group that was formed trying to copy the Soul Train dancers and the Lockers. So we had a dance group in Freeport High School called Sanford and Company, who got together by a guy named Sanford Williams, and we used to wear the knickerbockers and the Applejack hats and do all the locking stuff from LA, trying to copy Shabadoo and Rerun. So she saw me doing that and doing yoga, doing vinyasa yoga flow. She said you had dance qualities, and she invited me to come to her dance classes. And then she said that the Bahamas was participating in a Caribbean arts festival, and she wanted me to do a solo, a group dance, and a duet.
So I'll stop that there because this is the research is ongoing, but it's been so amazing to have access to incredible people who worked with Madame Lavinia, access to her record. She was a prolific record keeper. All right, friends. So I'm back and I'm eating chocolate. Let's talk about what I didn't say. Why Madame Lavinia, and what does Madame Lavinia have to do with Afrofuturism? Madame Lavinia was a culturally responsive practitioner who invested in learning about, as did Shirley, as did Catherine Dunham before them. They invested time and resources learning about the people that they were serving, and did not just come down and lay things on them. And I think we can all take a lesson from that. This is our awards presentation. Hey, Chris Bow, are you in the house? Maybe. Our first award winner is Dorica Delaval Grant. Pamela, I do not see Christine here with me.
Delaval Grant has been involved with performing arts since the age of 3. She has had the privilege and honor to be taught and influenced by legendary performers in the Bahamas, such as Hubert Farrington, Alex Sabine, Shirley Hall Bass, Cleo Parker Robinson, Lawrence Carroll, Robert Bain, and many more. Derica holds music certificates from the Trinity School of Music and the Royal Academy of Music, and certificates in dance from the Royal Academy of Dance. She has a Bachelor's of Arts degree in music, dance, and theater from Hunter College in New York, a certificate in arts administration from New York University, and a Master of Arts Management degree from Columbia College in Chicago. She has toured and performed all around the world in New York, Chicago, England, Scotland, Prague, and Paris. She has taught dance and music for more than 20 years, working for companies such as the Music Theater Workshop in Chicago, Illinois, New York Offstage, and Malone Studios in Nashville, Tennessee. She has been a member of elite dance companies such as the National Dance Company of the Bahamas, Blackfeet Dance Company, and Alvin Ailey. She was the administrator of the National Dance School of the Bahamas from 2007 to 2019, and is presently the Director of Culture and the co-owner of Imanji School of Performing Arts and Imanji Circus Arts. It is her ultimate desire to see others excel in the field of performing arts in the Bahamas. Amazing person. Thank you.
So on behalf of the Shirley Hall Bass Foundation, we are proud to present Derica Delaveau Grant with the Shirley Hall Bass Legacy Award.
Derica, are you there? And I should have introduced Christine, shouldn't I? I missed out. This is Christine Wallace Whitfield. She is my childhood friend. She is a Bahamas Dance Theater student, and she is the treasurer of the Shirley Hall Bass Foundation. Thank you, Christine, for making this award happen. And Derica, can you carry the mantle? She's in the car, y'all. We went too long for her. She has places to go and things to do. Yeah. Are you ready? Are you ready to carry this mantle of Catherine Dunham and Lavinia Williams and Shirley Hall Bass? We're giving you a heavy crown, girl.
Of course, I am definitely ready. Having gotten some of the education from Madam Lavinia, having been a student at the National Dance School since age 5, so when I took it over, it was more than a pleasure for me to carry on that legacy. I even met Catherine Dunham when I was in New York in college, so I would have done workshops with her, with her in a wheelchair, with the oxygen tank on the side of her. So I've got to experience and be taught by that great lady. And of course, Shirley Hall Bass, who took me from the age of, I think it was 7 when she took me, I know when I was to the National Dance School from the age of 5, but she took me from the age of 7. And of course, I am ready and willing to take on that mantle that she has put forth. She has instilled that in me, as well as in my other hand as the Director of Culture. I am here to make sure that the arts in the Bahamas flourish, getting those 9 types of intelligence out there, making sure that the valorization of our performing arts and culture happens. Valorization meaning that the people who do the culture actually value the culture, and the people who are around actually value the culture. That's why I'm here, and I find that I have learned that is my purpose. So I am thankful to Shirley Hall Bass Foundation and all those who went into nominating me and as well as awarding me this award. Thank you so much.
Hi, everybody. I'm sharing a slide of a site visit that we did to Imanji School of Performing Arts. Jarvis Grant, who is another student of Shirley Hall Bass, is, of course, the husband of the lovely Derica. And we were able to see this incredible, I mean, this is a hardworking couple putting together an entire school. They've had an incredible history, almost Cirque du Soleil quality, really imaginative, outside of the box. They've taken circus outside of the box. And we are recognizing her particularly for her, invaluable work as Director of Culture, but also for her commitment to the children that live on over the hill and making sure that everyone, and that is our goal, that everyone has access to performing arts education. Pamela, I'm going to lean on you again. And I think we have
okay.
I think we have
all right.
I think
yes.
Jillian Springer, if you don't mind reading her bio for us, I'll advance the slide.
Sure. Right. The next awardee for the Lifetime Achievement Award is Jillian Springer. Jillian was introduced to basic dance etiquette and the fundamentals of movement early in life by her mother, who briefly performed with the British West Indian Ballet Troupe of Trinidad under Bosco Holder. In 1969, Jillian enrolled in the Bahama School of the Theater under the direction of Shirley Hall Bass. She furthered her dance training with Columbia College in Chicago, the Joseph Home Dance Studio, Gus Giordani Jazz Dance Studio, Jimmy Payne Tap Dancing Studio, and the Bahamas National Dance School, and has performed and taught modern, pantomime, jazz, and cultural techniques. In her studies of the Royal Academy of Dance Technique, Jillian acquired certification for teaching pre-primary to primary grades 1 through 7, the vocational syllabi.
I'm going to say that this is from 2019. It's a short interview with some of Shirley's students. And here, Jillian gets down to the nitty-gritty of how she first started.
Shirley history. I got started through my sister, who was friendly with Delary Simonet, who she was one of the first students, and Crystal Thompson. Wow. And we all went to the same high school, and they were always talking about it. And I always, from the time I knew myself, wanted to dance. And so we talked about it with my mom. And one Saturday, she just carted us off. She didn't tell us where we were going. She just carted us off down to the YWCA where we had the classes and got us registered, and that's where I started. And everybody was like, Miss Bass, come in, Miss Bass, come in. At the time, she wasn't on the island, she was in Chicago. And so I'm wondering, who is this Miss Bass, you know? And finally she came and said, oh, this Miss Bass, this Conqueror lady is Miss Bass. Anyway, I got to know her, and I used to be in the back whenever we would perform. We were getting ready for, I can't even remember which one it was, but and I would always go in the back, and that little girl right there was really skinny. I was skinny.
Yes, you were.
Yeah.
Had a very small waistline. Yeah, I remember that.
What you doing looking at that?
Yeah.
Christine Bowe, yep. Wallace Woodfield, take it away.
So, on behalf of the Shirley Hall Bass Foundation, we are proud to present Jillian Springer with the Lifetime Achievement Award.
All right, friends. So that will conclude the Shirley Hall Bass Legacy Award presentations. And we're calling you all to action. We're asking what you can do to support dance education in the Bahamas. We're inviting you to join committees. We have recently met with the Minister of Education, who wanted us to start our work now. And so you best believe that Faith and Christine Wallace Woodfield and Pamela, all of the people who make up this community, we're going to be leaning on you for the next couple of years as we hope to plan a national program for performing arts education so that the children of the Bahamas have an opportunity to sing, to dance, to play music. And of course, media technology is to be included in that as well. So there's the Shirley Hall Bass Project. If you haven't joined us, please do. We're on Facebook as a 260 member group. And I think, do you guys have any questions or comments before we go home? Anything in the chat? It's nighttime and bedtime, and thank you so much, everybody, for coming. I'm going to take us out with music.
Get on your feet, onto the floor. It's time for you to have some fun. Just form a ring and clap your hands. We're gonna do the ring play dance. Ala bala chicken galala, ala bala boom. Ala bala chicken galala, ala bala boom. Ala bala chicken galala, ala bala boom. Ala bala chicken galala, ala bala. Let's go! Woo! Come on! Ring play time! All right! You in the place, you want to learn how to do this ring play thing. I on the stage, I can't go home cause the people shout boom. Alla balla